Live streaming is on.
Okay, guys, good morning. Welcome to Basic. So last week I was looking back and we had a couple trainings on Thursday and Friday. I don't know if we communicated that, so I apologize. But what we did on the last live class was probability. And that's the chance of something happening. So if you flip a coin, it's heads or tails. So heads will happen 1 out of 2 times, tails would happen out of 1 out of 2 times. But what I want to talk about is that doesn't always happen. So we have 2 types of probabilities. There's theoretical and experimental. And what I want to do is I want to show this video, and then we'll talk a little bit more about theoretical and experimental.
Let's say you put 50 of these magenta marbles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm not going to draw all of them, but you get an idea. There are going to be 50 magenta marbles. 15 magenta marbles. And there's also going to be 50 blue marbles. Blue marbles. And what you do is you have these 100 marbles in there, half of the magenta, half of the blue. And before picking a marble, you shake that. And so if you were to say, well, theoretically, what is the probability if you stuck your hand in your mouth? What is the probability of picking a magenta? Write the word magenta. What is the probability of picking a magenta marble? Well, theoretically, there's 100 equally likely possibilities. There's 100 marbles in the bag, and 50 of them involve a magenta. So 50 out of 100, but this is the same thing as a 1/2 probability. So you say, well, theoretically, there's a 1/2 probability. I just did the math. So these are 100 equally likely possibilities. 50 of them are magenta. Now let's say you actually start doing the experiment. So you literally take a bag of 50 magenta marbles, and then you start picking. The marbles, and then you see what marble color you picked, and put it back in, and then you do it again. And so let's say that after every time you put your hand in the bag, you take something out of the bag to observe what it is. We're going to call that an experiment. So after 10 experiments, let's say that you have picked out 7 magenta.
Interview from 10 to 11. Okay. So if you like and mix it up, put it on the phone.
Okay, guys, I'm going to stop. I see you're getting a lot of feedback. It's probably hard to understand. So I'll just pick up where this left off. So what they were talking about was theoretical versus experimental. Let me try to pick that up. So in theory, if we have 50 blue and 50 pink, that'd be 100 marbles. So in theory, you'd pick, if we pick, let's just say, put our hand in the bag 100 times. And remember, we're replacing the marbles. So in theory, you would get 50 out of 100 blue, and 50 out of 100 pink. But that's in theory. But if we do an actual experiment, and let's say, just for argument's sake, in our experiment, say in our experiment, we pick 70 out of, because remember we're placing the marble, so it's not like you pull one out and put it back in. So there's always 100 marbles in the bag. But say that we pick 70 blue and 30 pink. So that would be picking a blue we did 7 out of 10 times, and picking a pink would be 3 out of 10 times. That's when you actually do the experiment, because if I was going to back this up, and let's say we flip a coin, because on the coin it's either heads or tails, so you would think that it would be 50% for each. So we flip a quarter, it's going to be either heads or tails. So you would say, if you flip a coin, it's going to be heads 1 out of 2 times, but tails, it'd be 1 out of 2 times. But you guys know you could flip a quarter and it could land on heads 7 times in a row, or it could land on tails 7 times in a row. So all experimental means is when you actually do it for real. Because if you have a coin right now and you're flipping it, I'm going to ask you in theory, what's the probability of getting tails? And you're going to say 1 out of 2. And if I ask you theoretically, what's the probability of getting heads, you're like, it's going to be 1 out of 2. But if I tell you I want you to do that 10 times, that's the experiment. And when you do the experiment, it might not be 5 heads and 5 tails. It could be it lands on heads 7 times, and it lands on tails 3 times. Because you've actually done the experiment. Like I said, experiment's a little bit different than theory. Theory is just like without even trying it. We're just going to say, well, you have a 50% chance of getting heads and 1 out of 2 chance, and you have a 50% chance of getting tails. That's in theory. But then I go ahead and do the experiment, and it changes a little bit because we're actually flipping the coin. And in this case, it landed on heads 7 times, and it landed on tails 3 times. So once you do the experimental probability, heads would be 7 out of 10 times, tails would be 3 out of 10 times. Similar if, let me show you, if we do like a spinner, if I do a circle, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and you have like a spinner in the middle, and you spin it around, you think, okay, there's 4 probabilities, so chance of landing on 1 would be 1 out of 4 times. Chances landing on 2 would be 1 out of 4 times. Chances of landing on 3 would be 1 out of 4 times. It's similar to 4. It'd be 1 out of 4 times. Now that's in theory because you realize you have a spinner. There's 4 numbers it can land on. So each number has a 25% chance or 1 out of 4. Okay, so in theory, each number would be 25%. But then we do the experiment, it can get a little bit different because it could land on 1 all 4 times. And in that case, the experimental 1 would be 4 out of 4, excuse me. 2 would be 0 out of 4. 3 would be 0 out of 4. And 4 would be 0 out of 4. That's when we actually do the experiment. So all experimental means is when you're actually doing the spinning, the flipping, the picking the marbles out of the bag. That's when you actually do the experiment. Theory is just without trying anything. And theory is just based off basically, we have 4 numbers. We're going to spin it. There's a 25% chance of landing on each number. Just like when we flip a coin, it's going to be 50% because it's only going to be heads or tails. So the heads can be, there's only 2 possible outcomes. It's either going to be heads or tails. So in theory, when you flip a coin, you have a 50% chance of coming heads. And I say 50%, and that's the same as 1 out of 2. I'm just converting it to a percent. Tails, 1 out of 2, or 50%. But like I said, we're going to experiment, and it's not always going to be 50%. It could be, you certainly could flip a coin 10 times. It could land on heads 5 times, and it could land on tails 5 times. But experimental probabilities when you actually do the experiment. Just one thing that's going to be on your homework too, if you think about it, we play rock, scissors, paper. There's 3 possible outcomes. They're going to be rock, paper, or scissors. And if you're playing with 3 people, you think you're going to win 1 out of 3 times. But you guys know if you've ever played rock, paper, scissors, sometimes you win more than 1 out of 3 times. Sometimes you win less. So that's basically, on theory, you have a 33% chance of winning. But when you actually play the game, sometimes you win more than 33%. Just keep in mind, theory is just without actually trying anything. We're just looking at the numbers. Okay. Experiment is actually doing the experiment, whether it's flipping the coin 10 times. With 100 marbles in a bag, you're going to put your hand in and pull 50 marbles out and replace it. And then with the spinner, you're going to spin it maybe 4 times or 10 times, and it's not going to be even all the time. Sometimes just by chance, that spinner, it might land on 4. If we do it 10 times, it might land on 4 6 times. It might land on 4 3 times. So it's not going to be even all the time, even though in theory you would think it's going to be 25%. 1 out of 4 times it's going to land on 4. So if I did it 100 times, you think, well, it's going to land on 4 25 times. 1 out of 4, 25%. That's not the case. Do the experiment, your numbers are going to be a little bit different. So I'm going to give you some practice on doing theoretical versus experimental. And then tomorrow, we can go over a little bit of that. And I want to see here, this is what I think we did for, I want to pull up what I posted on. So this is what we did on, I think, on Wednesday. So if you look on what's the chances of a beanbag, if you throw it on the floor, landing on 4? So there's 25 options. So landing on 4 would be 1 out of 25. And I think if you go down here, yeah, it'd be 1 out of 25. Okay. And then it says landing on an odd number. So the odd numbers, we have 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, 15, 17, 19, 21, 23, and 25. That would be 13 times. If you go down here, I think it says 13 out of 25. Okay. Then it asks about a shaded number. And we look how many shaded numbers are there. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 15 out of 25. Okay. Then a prime number. The prime numbers in here would be 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, 17, 19. So that's going to be a prime number. There's only 9 prime numbers in here. So that's really what it was asking you to do here. And then I showed you the card one. So this was just basically pretty straightforward. If anyone had any questions about, I think I put all the cards on the lesson. So there's 52 cards. There's 4 different suits with 13 cards in each suit. So you get down to the cards, just know there's 52 total cards. That's why it's over 52. And there's 4 different suits. There's hearts, diamonds, spades, and clubs. So there's only 1, 2 of spades in every deck. That's why that's 152. Heart, there's 13 hearts, so 13 over 52. 7 are a jack. There are 2 7s in every suit. Excuse me, 1 7 in every suit, 1 jack. So that would be 8. Okay, that's how we got that. All right, you guys. So I will post some theory versus experimental probability. Remember, experiment, you're just actually doing the experiment. You're flipping the coin 10 times and just putting the results down. All right, you guys have a wonderful day, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.